You ever watched a man slowly disappear while still wearing a smile? He's the guy carrying grocery bags with one arm and holding the door with the other. He's the one fixing the Wi-Fi at midnight, nodding during arguments he didn't start, sitting across from a woman who once gasped his name in ecstasy, but now barely mumbles his presence. And here's the twist. He doesn't even know he's fading. He thinks he's being mature. He tells himself he's being patient, being supportive, being everything she asked for. But really, he's being erased, bit by bit. One, I'm sorry too many. One, it's okay that wasn't. One fake smile after another. And the cruelest part, he signed up for this. Now let me ask you something you've probably never dared to say out loud. Why do women seem to never want what they say they want? Why do they ask for sensitivity, then chase the guy who talks to them like a meeting on his calendar? Why do they demand equality and partnership, but light up around dominance? Why do they say, I want a nice guy, and then ghost him the moment he actually listens? The philosopher Schopenhauer called this a biological paradox, but I call it a crucifixion, because men today are being nailed to expectations that were never even real. Here's what hurts the most. She's not lying. She's not scheming. She's not some villain. She's just confused. Because what she says she wants comes from the lips of her culture. But what she responds to, that comes from deep within the biology she didn't choose. And nature has no sympathy. It doesn't care how many good morning texts you send. It doesn't care that you skipped your own dreams to support hers. It doesn't care that you stayed when her world fell apart. Nature designed her to desire what survives, not what submits. You think you're going to outlove that? You think loyalty, roses, and shared Spotify playlists are going to override millions of years of primal code? Let me give you a truth that might either set you free or tear you to pieces, depending on how deep your illusions run. She doesn't want your love. She wants your gravity. She wants to feel herself falling into something real, solid, immovable, something she can't control, but can't live without. And the moment you become too soft, too predictable, too available, she doesn't hate you. She just dries up. Schopenhauer didn't pretty this up with romantic fluff. He said plainly, with women, love always remains a matter of the will of nature, not of personal feeling. That means what pulls her in isn't your poetry, it's your presence. Nature doesn't push weak men out of the gene pool with violence. It does it through disinterest. She doesn't need to scream at you. She just stops laughing at your jokes. She doesn't need to cheat. She just withdraws that sparkle in her eyes. And you, thinking you must be doing something wrong, lean in harder. You give more. You become more romantic, more agreeable, more available. And unknowingly, you walk straight into your own execution with sincerity as your sword. Because here's the brutal irony. The more you become the man she said she wanted, the less you become the man her instincts respect. Let that settle in your bones. The words she speaks, that's social programming, her PR team doing its job. But what she feels, that's biological, pre-verbal, uncompromising. It doesn't read your intentions. It doesn't care about your deep talks. It smells strength, or it walks. You think you're her good guy. But if you've ever been dumped after giving her everything, here's the hard truth. You gave too much and became nothing. You weren't the mountain anymore. You were the mud sliding down it. That's what Schopenhauer was trying to scream to men centuries ago. Men are by nature more capable of objectivity, while women act more as the instruments of the species. Translation: it's not that you weren't loved, it's that your devotion made you invisible to her instincts. You remember that first moment she looked at you like you were her universe, like your name had just been carved into her DNA. She didn't see a paycheck. She didn't see your car. She saw something ancient in you that even you hadn't touched yet. But you remember when that look faded too, don't you? You didn't do anything wrong. That's the part that keeps you up at night. You were more present, more caring, more you than ever. And yet her eyes dulled. The sparkle turned to politeness. The passion turned to a tired kindness. Like she was trying to convince herself you still stirred her. But you didn't. Because the version of you she worshipped wasn't the one trying to keep her. It was the man who was whole without her. It was the man who had purpose, boundaries, and edges. It was the man who invited her into his life, not tried to mold himself into hers. Schopenhauer said, "A man can be himself only so long as he is alone. And if he does not love solitude, he will not love freedom." And that hits deep, because most men today aren't free. Their emotions are leased to the mood swings of a woman who might love them, but doesn't respect them. And when that respect dies, the kingdom you built with your bare hands turns into a daycare. You go from king to caretaker. She'll say, "You've changed." But the truth, you softened. And nature does not reward softness without strength. So let me say this straight, like iron into your soul. You cannot negotiate attraction. You cannot earn desire with loyalty. You cannot beg your way back onto the throne you once ruled effortlessly. The game isn't broken. You were just never taught the rules. You were trained to take her words as gospel. You thought, she wants a man who communicates, meant talk more. No, she meant a man who commands clarity with his presence. When she said, "I want vulnerability," she didn't mean tearful confessions. She meant a man who has faced his own chaos and mastered it, who offers it carefully, like fire in a frozen world. She's not lying to you. She just doesn't speak your language. And Schopenhauer, he didn't write love stories. He wrote autopsies of illusion. He said, "In their hearts, women think they were created only for the propagation of the species, not for the sake of man himself." That means she isn't wired to understand you. She's wired to select you. She's not trying to get to know you. She's trying to feel you. And feelings aren't fair. They're not earned. They're not logical. They're instinctual. She doesn't need another boyfriend. She needs a gravitational force. You're not in a race against other men. You're in a race against predictability, against your own need to be understood instead of felt. Because what pulls her in, it's not your resume, not your consistency, not your long-winded texts. It's something older than language. It's your presence, your silence, your groundedness, your mystery. And if you've ever been left, not because you weren't good, but because you became too known, too safe, too explained, then you felt this firsthand. The truth, the moment she can predict your every move, the movie's over. There's no suspense, no tension, no polarity. And without tension, attraction dies quietly. Here's the most painful part of all. You became that man for her. You betrayed your instincts to protect the relationship. You went from being her leader to being her audience, from the flame to the flicker. And no woman alive wants to follow a flicker. Let's break it down brutally. You can't reverse that with more flowers. You can't reignite the fire with more "I love you" texts, candlelit dinners, or crying in the car outside her apartment. That's not how you get her respect back. The only way forward? Resurrect yourself. And that resurrection doesn't start with her. It starts with you whispering the sentence most men are terrified to admit. "I would rather be alone than unseen." That's the threshold. That's the awakening. That's the moment you stop performing, stop people-pleasing, stop bending. Because you weren't born to be liked. You were born to be real. That's what Schopenhauer meant when he said, "The person who seeks solitude is one who has discovered the world, especially the social world, is incapable of satisfying him." Solitude isn't punishment. It's realignment. It's where the masculine regrows its spine. Because when you rediscover your power, your mission, your sharp edges, Women feel it before you say a word. You don't need to seduce her. You just need to stand there, full and unapologetic. And suddenly she's curious again. Suddenly she's looking at you the way she used to. But now, you're not chasing her approval. You're choosing your kingdom. Let me tell you about the most effective con ever sold to men. The myth that if you just love her more, deeper, harder, louder, she'll finally see your worth. That if you just show her how safe, soft, and loyal you are, she'll cling to you like oxygen. You were sold the fantasy that if you cried in her arms, brought her gifts, wrote her poetry, told her you'd die for her, she'd melt. But that's not how this works. And Schopenhauer, he knew it. And I know it, because I've lived it. I've poured every ounce of soul into a woman, only to realize I was pouring wine into a broken glass. Because no matter how much you give, if the container is cracked, or worse, if it's not meant to hold what you are, it'll never be enough. She didn't leave because you weren't good enough. She left because she felt too safe. And safe without strength. That becomes boring. Her biology didn't betray you, it compelled her. Ever seen a woman fall head over heels for a man who doesn't even try? You call him toxic. You call her crazy. But what you're witnessing is nature doing its job. Because to her body, not her brain, love isn't a checklist of kindness points. It's voltage, it's current, it's the pull of gravity. Schopenhauer said the sexual impulse is the fullest manifestation of the will to live. That will. It doesn't ask questions. It doesn't run on logic. It doesn't care about your mental health podcasts or your emotionally safe man brand. It wants vitality, power, not dominance, but direction, not control, but certainty. That's why she'll post quotes about emotional availability, then date the man who hasn't replied in 3 days. And you're left shaking your head saying, "But I was everything she asked for." Yeah, that's the problem. You became too available, too understandable, too explainable. You became the open book she no longer wanted to read, because the thrill, the magic, it lives in the unknown. And without mystery, there's no tension. And without tension, there's no seduction. That's when you stop being her man and become her emotional employee. And here's the thing nobody tells you. It's not your fault. You were trained to be this way, taught by schools, media, society, to be nice, to be vulnerable, to overshare, to prioritize her happiness over your own truth. But in the deep chambers of feminine attraction, comfort does not equal connection. Mystery outranks comfort. Every time. Schopenhauer wasn't bitter when he wrote this. He was precise. He said, "Women are instinctively cunning and know that to control a man, they must not always say what they mean, nor mean what they say." That's not an insult. That's understanding. That's the acknowledgement that her desire doesn't speak English. It speaks emotion, charge, tension. And if you don't speak that language, you'll misread every signal. You'll think her silence means she's fine, when a stronger man would sense the storm behind her stillness. You'll take her "I'm okay" at face value, when that was the moment she was begging you to lead. But how can you lead when you've never learned how to stand? How can you be her rock if you've never built your own mountain? You think being a man is about pleasing? Schopenhauer would laugh at that. He'd say, being a man is about enduring, about knowing yourself so deeply that not even her confusion can knock you off center. Because when she says one thing and does another, you don't panic. You don't text 3 paragraphs explaining your feelings. You just sit in your throne of energy and let her orbit return. And here's the truth most men never dare face. You were never meant to make her happy. You were meant to make her feel. And feeling, real, cellular, soul-sparking feeling, doesn't come from comfort. It comes from polarity. It's the magnetic dance between her chaos and your calm, her storm and your silence, her emotion and your grounding. That's the sacred polarity. And when you break that, when you collapse into her emotions, when you try to fix instead of feel, that's when she drifts. That's when she rewrites the past and says, I don't know, I just stopped feeling it. But what she's really saying, you let me lead. And she didn't want to lead. She wanted to surrender, but only to a man who didn't ask her for directions. Schopenhauer laid it out clearly. A man who is not master of himself is not fit to be master of anything, least of all a woman's heart. Let that ring in your ears, because the world today will teach you everything but that. It'll teach you how to be safe, but not how to be whole. The world won't teach you how to be a man. It will only teach you how to be safe. And safety, without strength, it's sterile. And women don't crave sterile. They crave depth. They crave mystery. They crave fire. Not because they're irrational, but because they're emotional. Creatures of evolution who are designed to test your structure. Not with cruelty, but with chaos. She's not trying to ruin you. She's trying to see if you can hold it all when the world is shaking. She's testing your center, asking without words, can I lose myself in your certainty? And here's the part you can't fake. You can't watch enough YouTube videos, can't read enough pickup guides, can't quote enough philosophers. You either become that man, or you keep losing to the version of yourself that never evolved past boyhood. Because she can sense the boy behind the performance. And she will never, ever stay with a boy who bends himself to win her over. Why? Because she doesn't want to be the prize. She wants to belong to a man who has already won himself. That's the real attraction. That's the real gravity. So now the question is, who are you? Are you still chasing approval? Still seeking permission? Still adapting yourself to fit into the idea of a man that social media told you to be? Or are you ready to stop? Ready to stop begging to be chosen and start choosing yourself? Because the moment you do that, everything changes. You stop needing her signals. You stop interpreting every text, every pause, every tone of voice. You've become your own compass. And there's nothing more attractive than a man who doesn't need directions. So if you've been ghosted, betrayed, abandoned, overlooked, this isn't the end. This is the beginning. This is your initiation. Your heartbreak. That wasn't punishment. That was a baptism. Because you don't rise by resenting her. You rise by understanding her nature and mastering your own. Let Schopenhauer be your witness. Let your suffering be your syllabus. Let solitude be your sanctuary, not your sentence. Because in the silence, in the stillness, you'll remember, you were never born to beg. You were born to build. And as for her, she will either rise to meet you, or she'll disappear trying to test you. Either way, you win. Because now, you're living in truth. You're no longer trying to prove your worth to a woman who can't even validate herself. You've stopped showing up at tables where your power gets negotiated. You've become the kind of man whose presence rewires a woman's nervous system before you even say a word. And that's the secret they never told you growing up. You thought the secret was effort, that if you just tried harder, you'd win. But it's not about effort, it's about energy. Effort is transactional, energy is spiritual. You can plan the perfect date, write her poems, listen to her pain, support every dream she has. And yet, if your masculine spirit is starving, everything you give her will rot in her hands. That's why the good guy always loses to the man with the dangerous calm. That's why the one who chases ends up ghosted, and the one who walks away becomes unforgettable. It's not a mystery, it's emotional gravity. And no one taught you to obey it. They taught you to defy it. But Schopenhauer knew long before alpha became a TikTok trend. He said it like a philosopher with no filter. Women exist in the main solely for the propagation of the species and are only the means thereto. And that doesn't mean she's shallow. That doesn't mean she's evil. It means her biology outranks her logic. She can say she wants calm, but crave chaos. She can say she wants a provider, but feel most alive with a man who doesn't need her provision. She's torn between her social self and her primal self. And if you don't understand that war inside her, you'll become its casualty. And here's the punchline that most men never recover from. She's not confused. You are, because you believed her words instead of reading her energy. You took, "I want you to be more emotionally available," and turned it into a TED Talk of your feelings. But what she actually meant was, "Show me that your emotions don't own you." She didn't want your openness. She wanted your leadership. She wanted to feel your pain, but see that it didn't control you. She didn't want to be your therapist. She wanted to be magnetized by your presence, not romanticism, instinct. And when you lose that presence, she doesn't send a memo. She doesn't write a speech. She just gets quiet. She stops asking questions, stops initiating, stops complaining. And you think it's peace, but it's the funeral song of dying attraction. And this is where most men crumble, because they start chasing a ghost. They start texting more, apologizing more, promising more. But she's already gone. Not physically, energetically. She stopped seeing you as the mountain. And now, you're the mudslide. And the most tragic part, you became that for her. Trying to protect the love, you sacrificed the very essence that made her love you in the first place. You went from edge to echo, from leader to pleaser. And no woman stays attracted to an echo. So here's your turning point, your line in the sand. You cannot fix this with more romance. You cannot bring her back with better dates or more tears. You can only reclaim this by resurrecting yourself. And that starts with a decision, one you make in silence, in solitude, in strength. I would rather be alone than unseen. Because that's where rebirth begins. That's what Schopenhauer meant. That's what masculinity has always known, but forgotten in the age of niceness and performative softness. You don't seduce her with safety. You command her respect with certainty. And once you've found your center again, your mission, your gravity, you won't have to chase love. Love will orbit you. So if this woke something in you, like, share, subscribe. Not because I need validation, but because there's a generation of men out there who've forgotten their power. And we're here to wake them up. Your throne isn't gone. It's just been empty. Time to sit on it.